So hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Launch. Super happy to be here. I am completely flying solo, so I'm taking care of a lot. Hopefully it won't become a problem, and looks like I'm already getting a little bit of feedback here. So let me try to turn the audio over here completely off. I've got like several machines going. So it looks like we got some people coming in, so make sure that you like and subscribe, and if you send me some comments, I will be answering them. I'll be taking breaks and I'll be answering some stuff. I plan to do sort of like 30-minute demo and then 30-minute Q&A at the end. And what I'm doing today is talking about React and GraphQL, primarily with a focus on React, and I'm going to be talking about React hooks. So GraphQL and React are extremely popular web development platforms. And if I was looking for a job today, it's something that I would definitely want on my resume. And the GitHub API makes it super easy. It's a public API. It's pretty well made, so it's a good example of something that you can practice on. And so today I wanted to walk you through the project I built for the course. But first, let me go over some of the slides that I made for the course as well. So I've got all the slides at this URL right here, which is rabo.org/slides_the launch. And yeah, hello everyone. There's already people appearing. This is fantastic. Thank you, Saeed, and welcome. Yes, so if you want to follow along, you can go to this URL and you can take a look at the slides as I go through things. The slides also have navigation, so you can hit the arrow keys to go forwards and backwards. If you hit the M key, you'll see a sidebar. And so what I'm planning on doing is on every one of these different episodes that I'm doing, and I'll be doing about one a month, I plan to add some stuff onto this sidebar here. So you hit the M key to show that. And so I'm going to go to the first one right now, which is just the React GraphQL slideshow. And holy cow, if it says it can't read anything. Okay, I didn't expect that to happen. Let me make sure that I am actually running this. Of course, of course. All right, so let's try that again. And let's go to this slide. All right, so here's what it should look like when you run it. So this is actually the slideshow that I'll be going on through today. And what you want to do is hit the arrow keys to go forward and backwards. You can also still hit the M key, and then this slideshow has like a little microsite. So if you click on this notes section, you'll get the same thing as the slideshow, just presented in a web page format. And you can actually read what I'm going to be talking about. So you don't have to take notes. You could just go by this right here. And then if you want to, you can switch back to the slideshow like this. Also, I prepared, or I uploaded a version of this to my website last night on rabo.org, which has essentially, I wonder if the stream will be playing when I go to this page. I guess if you hit the play button, the stream will be playing. But it's sort of the same thing that I'll be talking about today in article form with a lot of links. So you can go to rabo.org. You can take a look at the slideshow that I have here. And yeah, it's just the video quality is low. I'm not really sure what that is. I guess I don't know. I have a pretty good connection here. At any rate, this will all be recorded and you can watch it back on a broadcast. So hopefully it'll be good enough for people to watch and the watermark. So it must be, I'm not sure where people are watching this, the link. All right, so let's go back and go to the link to the slideshow. So also the link to the slideshow is right down here at the bottom. So it's rabo.org slides _ the launch. Remember to hit that M key and then go to the sidebar and choose the only one there right now, which is this right here. So that's sort of how the slideshow works. So what I wanted to talk to you through today is walk you through the project. You know, I'm the type of learner that learns by doing, and that's why I build so many courses that are very project-based. So I try to give you practical experience when I teach something, and also a good sort of starting point for additional ideas. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I built for this course. So let's go over here and take a look at the React app that I built here. So what I built here is essentially this app that queries the GitHub GraphQL API, and it retrieves some data. This is data just from my list of repos on GitHub. And you could do a couple of things here. You have a list of repositories. You can do a search here. So it's a dynamic search. This is what React is beautiful for doing. You could just have it manage the DOM for you. And as soon as the data changes, you can have it modify the content. So it looks like the quality may be fixed up. You can also modify the amount of records that you retrieve, and it's dynamic, and it's kind of showing you the total amount of items that it's retrieving in here. So I shouldn't be a slider. There should be more slides. So there's 22 repos that I have with the keyword slide. And if I want to, I can click forward and backwards to go through that list. Then other than that, what I wanted to do is show you that you can retrieve some additional data like the name and description. And then there's also some additional information. I kind of wanted to make this as a quick way to take a look at my repos and make sure that I have descriptions and licenses. And of course, I don't have a lot of that, especially on the slides. All right, so that's what the app does. So you can find the code on GitHub for this application, and you can download it. It's freely available. And so if you go back to the slides, you'll see that at the bottom, there is a link to the repo right here. You could just go to github.com/planetoftheweb is where all my repositories are. Actually, the repo is going to be in our LinkedIn Learning repository. So just click right here, and it should take you to the repository for this course. So you can download all the files. Whether or not you have a LinkedIn Learning account, you can download the files, and you can go ahead and practice with it if you want to. Now, in this particular repo, this has some security features that are not included in the course. But if you go to the rabo.org website, you can find a video on creating the authentication tokens. For security reasons, I can't include that in the repo because then you'd have access to like all my repositories. So I unlocked the video for how to create the authentication parameters within GitHub. And you can check that video out and you'll be able to use the repo otherwise. So that is going to be pretty good. Let's see. So you saw that I added, the simple search, a list of repos, some data, as well as pagination. So let's take a peek at the technology that I'm using for this. Let's go to the slideshow. So I already showed you the demo. So what I'm using for this is, of course, React and GraphQL. And in this slideshow, all the links are clickable. So you can click on these links from the slideshow as well. Also on the web page, on the microsite, and also on rabo.org. I'm, of course, using the GitHub GraphQL. It has a graphical user interface as well. And that graphical user interface gives you access to everything you see in this repo. So if I click on this, it'll take me to an Explorer, a GraphQL or a GraphQL Explorer. If you use GraphQL, there is a version of this that you normally use, but GitHub has its own version. The advantage here is that this version will be connected to your account. So you'll have to sign in, but once you're signed in, you can perform queries here on the left and click on this and then get some data from the GitHub GraphQL on the right-hand side as if you were logged into your account from your account as well. Okay, would you share it in the chat? So let me just put in, go to rabo.org. So actually somebody's asking me, for some reason, it looks like the quality isn't that great in some places. So gravo.org is one place to go. You could just look at the top article there, or gravo.org/slides_GraphQL React, I think it is. Let's see. So let's check it out. Slides. Underscore the launch. All right, so yeah, you can, if you're having trouble getting to it, just go to either of those URLs and you can get to the slideshow as well. So GitHub GraphQL, of course, has that graphical that lets you access all the data. And then I'm also using Bootstrap. I'm using Bootstrap version 5 beta 1. That's what was current at the time that I recorded this. Till yesterday or the day before, they announced beta 3. And beta 2 was a big update. So I would say try to use beta 1. Just npm install the repo. It'll install all the versions I think that you need. So beta 2 added all RTL support, right to left support, which is fantastic. But it means that a lot of the classes of things change. So just be mindful of that. So I've been using Bootstrap icons quite a bit. It's about 1,300 icons from the makers of GitHub. And it's pretty well put together and integrated into GitHub. I have a video of this in my website, so you can check that out if you want to check out that project. It's pretty awesome. And I'm also, of course, using Sass. I'm actually using the Sass version of Bootstrap. When I use Sass with a project, I try to use, when I use Bootstrap with a project, I usually go for the Sass version because it's a lot more configurable. And I actually have a course on using Tailwind CSS with React, and that'll be coming up. That'll be the next launch, so stay tuned. Like and subscribe and keep up with all my stuff. And I'll do another demo of how those two things integrate, which is fantastic. It's actually a little bit better, I have to say, than using Bootstrap. It's just that Bootstrap, it's really common, and I'm very familiar with it, so I really do enjoy using it as well. So let's see, let's turn off the sharing and the chat. Wow, a lot of comments. So let's keep on going. All right, so let's talk a little bit about GraphQL Basics and how it works. So GraphQL is essentially just a query language, I guess similar to SQL. The huge advantage in GraphQL is that it lets you retrieve all the information at once, all the information you need for an entire page at once. So as you probably know, that it was developed by Facebook. So think about when you go to a Facebook page, how much data it needs from the server. And traditionally, with REST APIs, we would have to go to different places to get the different data that we needed. So the big advantage to GraphQL, or the query language of GraphQL, is that you can just get the single piece that you need for the entire page. So think about an entire Facebook page and how much of it is like chats and connections and all that stuff. You can get everything you need for the page at once. That's the big advantage over the REST APIs, which means that they tend to be a lot faster and more efficient in retrieving data than other pieces. Also, I do suggest that if you are watching this somewhere where maybe the quality is a little low, maybe try switching to another place. So I think LinkedIn is working pretty well. If you're having a hard time, maybe try to switch to other LinkedIn. And also, I think I'm on Periscope. I'm at Planet of the Web just about everywhere. All right, so the GitHub GraphQL has your account info, and I showed it to you a little bit ago, already built in. So you can use the GraphQL Explorer to actually test some of the GraphQL queries. It's a fantastic way to learn GraphQL, extremely well documented. So I've already shown it to you how you can create queries here. You log in. If you hit history, it shows you all the queries that you've performed in time. And then it also has this section here called Docs, and you can go through and look at any of the documentations directly from here. Also, it has really excellent autofill. So as you're typing, when you hover over things and you do certain things, it actually brings up the documentation right there. So super handy. It's a fantastic way to explore. And we'll explore a couple of things about the GraphQL API today. So we already saw how you can retrieve your login information. In addition to that, you can create, you essentially saw that when we create a GraphQL query, we're doing is going through the schema of the document and retrieving items from the schema, and that's how it works. You just go through and the schema, go through the schema and identify fields that you want to work with, and the fields can be of different types. So you may be familiar with regular JavaScript types, like strings and numbers, objects, arrays, that sort of stuff. Within GraphQL, there's all these additional types, and you can see it when you roll over here that, for example, here it expects a string from the user. And if we go to other types, so if we went to, like, say, docs, we chose query, and then we found something else in here, you'll start seeing sort of stranger types. So you'll start seeing a type called, for example, GitHub metadata. That is a type, and so if you see a little bang here, an exclamation point, it means that information is required whenever you request this element. So you're going to get familiar with some of the types in here, and what you need to know is that there's actually two main types of requests that you can make in GraphQL. You can make either queries, which is the most common, and this course exclusively uses queries to retrieve data. But you can also use mutations, and mutations are what you use to modify data. So once you get the hang of those two types of requests, then you can retrieve anything from the GraphQL API, and then also modify anything by sending some mutation requests. Now, you can, for example, retrieve other fields. So here's a bunch of other fields that we can retrieve, not just what we got just a login before. So in addition to the logging, you can retrieve all kinds of information about you just by typing in this kind of query. Now, when I paste, you're going to notice that I no longer have the keyword query. If you don't put anything, or if you just put in an object, it'll assume that that you're trying to give it a query. So I'm going to paste this. There's a cool button here called Prettify that makes it look nice if it doesn't. But this one already looks pretty nice. So when I click on this, you can see that now I'm retrieving a lot more data, and it's essentially my user information, including my username, my name, a little bio, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, you can retrieve any number of fields like that. In addition to that, you can also pass along arguments. So when you need to be more specific about certain fields, you can pass along something like this right here. Here I'm passing along a field called a key. And so I'm asking for the license object, and I'm asking for a specific key or a specific license to be retrieved from that as well. So if I grab this and I paste this and I hit this arrow, you can see that now I'm getting a lot more information here. So if you went to the docs and you clicked on query and you look for the, let's see, the license, you'll see that it's going to need the specific license that you need. And then here's all the fields that you can find. So I think that when you start typing things in here, it's actually going to retrieve some of this data from the docs. But you can actually manually navigate through the docs and take a look at, any piece of information. So this is something pretty cool. Looks like Felipe says that he just refreshed the page and the video quality got a lot better. Awesome. Thanks for helping each other out. All right, so cool. And let's just keep on going. So in addition to that, whenever you want to retrieve a list of elements, you use what's called a node. So here's an example of a node we want to get. Think of a node as sort of like an array. You can specify here with a parameter that you need just the first two items. There's a limit to how many items you can retrieve. I think it's like 100. So with this particular field, you have to specify how many of them you want. You can see that there's 190 of them. So we have to specify how many we want. And then you can retrieve those items. Notice that they come in an array of nodes, right? And so you have to mind that what you retrieve from GraphQL is a JSON object. And you have to kind of understand how it gets returned. When you want the list of stuff, it's just going to return in a nodes array. And you're going to have to parse that yourself whenever you're working on your page. So cool. Let's see what else. So you can also qualify the results. So you can also say, I want not just the first two repositories, but I want them already ordered for me. So think about a lot of times we have to build sorting functions, in JavaScript or in React. This thing will automatically take care of it for you by retrieving them in the right order and the right format for you when you make a query. So let me copy this query, go back to the GraphQL Explorer, just paste that in, and it just retrieves them in the order that I specified. Super cool. It also gives you a unique ID. So that's pretty important for React projects. A unique ID is something that you need to add whenever you work with lists. So it also provides that for you. And you can see that the sort of format that you're asking for things in is a JSON-y type of format. It's its own sort of format. So you can see that nodes, for example, it's just a list of fields. Excuse me. There are no types in there. So it's very JSON-y, but it's not exactly JSON. And I think if I hit prettify, this is going to spread these out a little bit so that they're a little bit easier to see. Also, as I mentioned, when you hit return here, let's see, I think there is, if you hit control and then spacebar, it actually lets you see all the list of other things. So you end up, a lot of times, if you know what you're looking for, you don't even have to look at the documentation. It's a good place to start, though. This GraphQL Explorer is pretty handy. So qualifying the results, lets you control how the data is retrieved, and it can already give you data sorted and organized. You don't have to worry about that in your project. All right, what about when you want to paginate things? So if you want to have different pages of things, you're going to use something called edges. And this looks a little bit differently. I have to really get rid of the curly braces to fit all this in the slide. Let's see if I can copy this. And let me go over to the Explorer. I'm going to paste this, and I'm going to hit prettify so that it looks nice. And then I'm going to hit this right here. So here, I'm retrieving 2 items, and this looks a little bit interesting. Notice that now we still get the page count or the total count. We still get the edges as an array of objects, and each object is now going to have the node in it. So this is formatted slightly differently. But this is how we can get a list that we can use to paginate. So let me actually show you the code for pagination a little bit better. So in order to paginate things, what you end up doing is you end up getting something called a cursor. A cursor is like a special ID that lets you know where in the pagination you are for each element. So here we're retrieving the first 2 elements after a specific element with a hash. And we're asking it to be ordered, and we're asking for the total count. And actually, let me copy this and make it pretty because it's harder to read in this place right here. So I'll paste this, hit prettify. So you can see that when I retrieve the page information, I'm asking for some additional items here. And these items are pretty important. I'm asking whether or not, based on how I'm asking for this data, it's the first 2 elements after this hashtag right here. I'm asking whether or not this page that I've requested has a previous page or if it has a next page. And also the start cursor would be the cursor ID of the first element in the page, and also the end cursor, which would be ID of the element in the last page. So let's hit the process here, and you can see what it's doing. It's giving me all that data. And it's saying that, yeah, this has a previous page as well as a next page. And here's the cursors just in case I want to jump to a specific element. And that is what I'm using in my project. So that's pretty much all the GraphQL that you're going to need for this project. It's not as daunting as it seems. The language is so JSON-y that it's easier to learn. The GraphQL Explorer makes the process of sort of figuring out what the query should be super easy. And what you end up doing is just copying and pasting. Once you play around with getting the data that you need, you end up just copying and pasting the query. Wow, we're going pretty slow here. You end up copying and pasting that query into your React project. So let's talk about hooks. Now, hooks are extremely popular. Everybody that I asked really loves hooks. Of course, I feel like I'm just like most people. I don't really love to learn new things until there's some sort of type of benefit to it. So I was very apprehensive of hooks when they first come out. I think they came out as I was recording a course. So it's essentially a newer way of building React apps that let you build applications without having to use the class-based structure. The class-based format for React is a little bit dated. It sort of tried to simplify how you created things with JavaScript in the old days. A big advantage is that you don't end up using classes. And once you start using it, it'll feel more like normal JavaScript. It'll actually feel more like extremely modern JavaScript. A lot of the concepts that you end up using will actually help you become a better and more updated developer. So I highly suggest that you make the switch to hooks, and I think you'll end up loving it. Also, it changes. One of the pains with class-based React is that you always ended up having to bind, change the meaning of the keyword this in JavaScript. And you always had to, if you wanted to sort of control an object, you had to bind that object manually. And because hooks uses arrow functions, which have a different way of working with, with the this keyword and understanding what element it's targeting, you actually never have to worry about binding anything in hooks. Super cool, very nice. Totally, that's the part that you're going to be like love. Love. Okay, so when I did an informal poll, and you can actually click right here if you want to take the poll. Let's see how many answers I got. This is the results that I got. 84% of people said that they preferred hooks. This is out of 181 votes. It's 84 to 16 right now, 5,000 views. And yeah, I'm telling you, I am just as resistant to learn new things. I only like to learn them if I think that they're going to have a huge benefit to me. If it doesn't, I don't like to learn new things. I'm just pig-headed like that. So, but almost everybody that uses hooks likes it. I think it's just making that switch. And this type of course that just walks you through it is really good. In the next course that I promised you for next month, you'll see that I'm actually going over a simpler project. It doesn't use GraphQL. It uses a REST API. And it's a little bit better intro. So actually, let's talk about the problems that I have with hooks, because this is why some people don't like them. Essentially, it creates two versions of React. And React is difficult enough to understand and get. But there's two versions of it, the class-based React and the hooks-based React. And the documentation is kind of a mess. Sometimes you go to a page and it shows you how to do things with hooks. Sometimes you go to a page and it's the class architecture, and a lot of times you go to an article and you don't know which one you're reading, or it's confusing as to what it means. So unfortunately, it creates a documentation mess, and it's just the lingo that people use when talking about hooks is also, I think, a lot harder to understand. So you'll hear, for example, the one that really hits you when you first work with it is that the name of the hooks. For example, there's a hook called the use effect hook, which is replacing a bunch of loading instance methods. So before, you used to have things like the component did mount, component did update, and component will mount. And now that is all being replaced by this use effect hook. And now the state is managed with another hook called the use state hook. And eventually it makes sense, but I really don't know why. I read the description for why it's called use effect. It's not that I don't like things that are difficult to understand, even if I do understand them, because I think it creates a problem with language when you're talking about it. So let's take a look at, you do have to rethink the way that you do old things, and you can't use, I'm not sure that you can use both. I think you technically could, I guess, use both hooks and classes, but honestly, you wouldn't want to. And once you switch to hooks, you will love it much better. So let's take a look at hooks in practice in the project that I build. So the key to understanding the application that I built goes down to a couple of different parts, essentially how I get my data and what I do with the data. So I'm going to go over that. So I'm going to show you that in the project. And the piece that I'm going to show that with is, so let's look at the project again really quick before. So the thing that I'll show you how you use this hooks and how you use this React-based stuff is by showing you how this search functionality works here. So that's what I'm demoing to you. So, and I don't think I have any more slides here, so that's great. I think I just have the closing slides in a minute. So let's just go over and let me stop my screen, and I'm going to share my project screen instead. So share, and let's try. Okay, so here is the code from the repository. And it's going to come up in just a minute. And so I'm going to show you different pieces of this. So right now I'm in the, okay, so if you know how a React project works, the index.html, the index.js is the entry point. This entry point calls the app component, which is the main component. And then you just call a bunch of subcomponents from there. So here's the different subcomponents. We have the query, repo, info, search box, nav buttons. And the one that we're focusing in is the search box for the most part. So if you take a look at the search section, so, and I'll show it to you from kind of the entry point of the search. So what I'm doing in order to get my data from the GraphQL API is using a hook called use effect. And again, I think this is kind of confusing. So you're using, I don't even quite understand maybe like what the effect is, but you're essentially, from this use effect method, you're asking for it to fetch you some data using this fetch data method. And you're saying, you're also tracking the activity of fetch data. So this hooks allows you to have more fine-tuned control over when things happen in React. So let's take a look at this fetch data method, which is right here. Now, this one is using another hook called use callback. And this use callback is going to allow you to try to analyze what's happening with a certain group of variables. So what we're saying here is if any of these variables change while somebody's using my application, I want you to refetch my data, right? That's what this use callback is allowing you to do. It lets you, otherwise it would actually fetch the data all the time, regardless of what was going on. Here, we're just being very specific and saying only when these things change do I want you to go look at my data. Other than that, this fetch data is just like a simple or a traditional fetch call, like a promise-based fetch call from JavaScript. So this is just regular JavaScript. We're issuing a post method. We're passing along a series of headers. These headers are just data that the application is going to need. It includes like all that security info that I talked about. And then we are passing along some query text that essentially my query will be in this query text variable. That happens to be in query.js. And you can see that this looks similar to the things that we were doing. It's a little bit fancier because I'm actually using the search method here. So this search sort of option for querying allows you to almost duplicate the functionality of search in github.com. So if you go to github.com, you know that it has a super powerful search. So that's what we're doing here. We're just saying, I want you to look for a query string and then return the data with all this other stuff. So that's what's happening there. All right, so once we retrieve that data, then what we're going to do is move that data into different pieces. And I'm essentially putting them here in temporary variables that make a little more sense. And then I'm going to use this method called set username, set repo list. And the one that we are working with is actually not in here because when I initialize, I don't have a search. Like nobody has typed anything in the search. So I'm not setting the search to anything. So where are these coming from? These are coming from up here where I define the state of my data. So in the old React, you used to have like a state variable that goes away. With new React, you use state. And then you can create an element that is going to hold the value of the item. So here is the query string that is dictating how the query looks that I send to GitHub, right? And then I also create a method. So when I'm creating this variable, I'm actually also creating a method that is a setter that is going to allow me to modify that data. Kind of strange. And then I can initialize it using that useState variable. And I initialize the query to 0 or to nothing. I initialize the page count to 10. And you can see that I initialize other things in here. So how does this actually, the search actually work? So let's go into the actual search box, which is right here. And we'll kind of walk backwards from the input field. So you can see here, the input field here has some data that it receives from the main app, right? And in here, the important one is, this is all just regular input field data. The important thing here is that it uses the value of the query string that it receives from app.js. And then whenever it changes, it generates an event, right? That event gets the value of the input field here. And then it passes it along to an event. This is a custom event that I'm creating called onQueryChange. Usually I call them on something, right? So if we go back into app.js and we find the place where we are actually using the search, this is right here where I'm actually using that component that's in that different file. Here I am passing along the variables from my state, right? And I'm also looking for 2 events that the input field or the component will potentially trigger. And the 2 events are on query change and on total change. So somebody changes the total, then I perform I change the variable. So this is where when somebody types in that input field, it creates an event, it passes that along to the parent component, right? And then it retrieves the value of that data. And then I modify the set query string right here. And the fantastic thing about React is that when you modify your state, it actually takes care of the interface for you, which is the beautiful thing about React. And that's how you do stuff. That's kind of how that whole process works. Let's see. Yes, somebody says, this is so true. I am lucky I started out with hooks so that I do not have to choose. Very good. Okay, so that is essentially how the search functionality works. It's also how everything else works. I showed you how you query the data. It's pretty much just a fetch. It's just that you have to get used to the structure of how you do that thing with hooks and React. So I really enjoy React with hooks. I'm a convert, but I'm sort of like an apprehensive convert because I recognize that it isn't the nicest thing to switch to. Let's switch back and share my, let me stop this and share my screen. Okay, so, and we'll switch back over to the slides. Let's see. So I'm back in the slides, and then like at the very end, it has the conclusion, which says, here's links where you can follow me on LinkedIn. Here's where you can find this course. Now, if you follow me earlier on and on the segment for this page, I have the ability to make a course free for 24 hours. And the way that works is if you follow me on LinkedIn, then I created a special link, and you should be able to see it by following. This is actually the post to the link to that post where I made this course available free for 24 hours. The course is only about 2 hours long, so there should be plenty of time. I do think that you have to watch it. Like if you start watching it, you'll have to finish within 24 hours. It's not a very long course. There's a GitHub repo with all the code, and hopefully I explain things well. You can take a look at all my courses, and there's the link to my blog. The blog has a bigger version of this article that has like copy and pastable code, and it actually has a couple of videos. The one important one is the video on setting up your database, authentication, and that sort of stuff. I also have a YouTube channel. You can check that out. It's actually a better place than LinkedIn. Doesn't have a good way of aggregating stuff. So you can find, say, the last launch that I did which was on Tailwind, CSS. You can find that at that link right there. So let's see, what time are we doing on time? We have like 20 minutes. I went a little bit over what I wanted to. But I'll be happy to answer any questions. Let me make this window me bigger. And I have to like move over here now. Me bigger and it's smaller. And I'll be happy to take some questions. Maybe I'll scroll through some of the stuff in here. I apologize for the bad connection. I'm not really sure what that is. It looks like somebody disconnected their VPN and it cleared. So VPN's definitely something you want, but I apologize. I imagine that the recordings that are on YouTube will be better. If not, I have, once I finish the broadcast, I get a recording from StreamYard. So I'll make sure that if it's bad, I'll look at the YouTube one. And if it's bad, then I'll just upload a new one with the good stuff. So there's like a lot of comments. Let's see. Already said, hey, there's like a bunch of people saying hello. I'm sorry about the blurriness. It's just, I don't even know what that is. I checked the connection before I started the broadcast, and it was like the best connection I've ever had. So it's not me, but I do have this iPad that's sitting on the side, and I did notice that it's essentially just monitoring the stream. And I did notice that as it was coming in, sometimes it did look a little bit pixelated. So I apologize. Okay, so let's see what else. Somebody says, can't wait to see that. I'm not sure what that is, but okay. Let's see, just refresh this. There's a lot of comments about the bad connection. Is GraphQL faster than, so this is a good question. Is GraphQL faster than other query languages? Yes, absolutely, totally. And the reason that what makes it faster is the fact that you are making one call and you can get everything you want. If you notice, you were also able to sort and order directly from the call. So a lot of times when we get data back I need to step on this side. A lot of times when we get data back, we have to worry about sorting and ordering and paginating. Here, it's doing all that for you, and you're only retrieving the visible items on the page. So you could do some of that stuff with the REST API, but think about if you went to like a Facebook page, how much data it's actually getting from different places. So it might be getting like some chat data, might be getting some data from somewhere else. The nice thing about GraphQL is that it can just give you everything that you need at the moment without having to retrieve things that it doesn't need, like other pages. And it can just give you essentially everything you need to essentially build the page at the time. So yeah, much faster. So definitely something you want to learn. Also, like I'll also try to do all these courses that give you some practical experience with new things. They're not like too big, so you can you can take a course like this, a couple of hours, and the course like that'll be out like in a month. It'll be probably like about the same, like maybe a little bit shorter because it's maybe simpler. These are really good courses to take. So let's see, I've been paying for LinkedIn Learning for years. Love it. Oh, that's good. That's nice. Thank you so much, Mark. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I am so lucky to have this job. I really appreciate being able to help other people. So I'm glad that and I feel like I am just like you. Like I hate like learning. When I've loved the way that something works, I hate learning something new. And I know that I have to do it, and I do it. But there's a couple of problems that I have with GraphQL. I'm not GraphQL, React, and some of the issues that I mentioned before. So it's not like I totally understand if you don't want to go, but I'm telling you, eventually, I think you'll like it. You'll like it better on the tail end. So let's see, you and React developer. Am I a React developer? Yeah, sometimes. So interestingly enough, the course that I was talking about that's going to be out like in a month is a course that I actually on purpose did with multiple different platforms. So I did it on Vue, React, Angular. Yeah, I did an Angular version, jQuery even. I don't think I did a like vanilla JavaScript version. And until I started working, and I had to redo it for the course that's out next month in React, until I was liking Vue.js a lot better. Loved Svelte. I didn't do this type of course in Svelte, but I do have one on Svelte. But when I started using hooks, I think I liked hooks. I almost want to say better than using Vue.js. except for the confusion with the weird lingo with the hooks. It's a little bit sort of harder to get into it. I mean, once you get used to it, it's not a big deal. So I'm like a developer of a lot of things, a master of lots of stuff, probably not as deep as it should be next. So I'm not sure what that means. It could be Nextjs. Somebody wants me to do. I would love to do a course on Nextjs, and it's on my list of potential things to promote. So probably peak use at this time of day. It could be. Yeah, it could be. But I think it may have been just an overall system problem. Okay, what is the best directory structuring architecture? You know, with GraphQL, man, I don't think I have big enough projects to really be able to say that. I tend to, like, I think when I was trying to organize this thing, I had most of my things in a source folder. And as things get bigger, then I try to create maybe like a components folder, because in React, you kind of have like the main pages, and then you end up with a bunch of utility pieces, but it just depends on the size of your application. So your application gets bigger, then you kind of get a little bit smarter about where you put things. If you use something like Nextjs, then it actually has like a better directory structure. And then you have to worry about what happens when you're using pagination, like in React, which, you know, it forces you to use a slightly different structure. So let's see, being an extrainer. Oh, I should put it up. Being an extrainer, JavaScript. I know how hard it is to set up every. Yes, yeah. And like I said, I'm flying solo, so I have, believe it or not, I have a Mac, an iPad, I have a prompter, I have a monitor, and I have a phone that I'm looking at right now. So it's like a bunch of stuff. I think I try to make my life harder than it needs to, honestly. But it's kind of handy because I can see like different things on different. Yeah, and then like you have the StreamYard application, which lets you load things. So, but I don't think the bad connection was me. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Why didn't you use async await? You know, I could have. I don't know, async await. I don't think that, you know, feel like I try to be simpler if possible. I could definitely have used that. I don't know, maybe in a future course. Sometimes, like for such a small app, I don't know, maybe you don't really need it. Svelte is a tad neglected in LinkedIn. Doing Next.js course right now. Okay, cool. There's a Next.js course. Yeah, Svelte is a tad rejected. I think that the problem with it is that we definitely monitor the traffic to how well things perform. And if something doesn't capture the audience, then, you know, we have limited resources and ability to cover things. So if you want Svelte or more Svelte coverage or Next.js, then just, you know, just ask for it. And then, you know, when a lot of people ask for things, then we end up doing a course. Trust me, I want to do more Svelte stuff. But it's not my job to decide actually what's get in the library. I can request, but unless there's there's a community asking for the things of subscribers, then we sometimes don't cover some stuff. Okay, so let's see. Wow, that's a big one. I am just starting with React. Appreciate your input given today. I do have a question. Can React really be used to publish to mobile and desktop? I don't know that dream of doing everything in one place is a common dream, but I don't know that it always works well. There's a thing called React Native, which is kind of the mobile version of React. There are some projects that attempt to kind of perform that. Man, I publish a lot of content every day, and I do remember there being something that kind of lets you push to mobile. I think the problem is that mobile is its own thing and almost like requires a different interface. But I could see where you could publish to different devices using different projects. I've never seen it, anything that gets created for everything do well. I have a course on Electron, love Electron. That lets you do desktop. There are some other programs that will let you do those kind of things. I'm not familiar with anything that just allows you to do desktop, mobile, all platforms. And I don't know that it would be a great thing. Like, I don't know that it's going to look great or function well if you really try to do that. So let's see. Okay, which Let's see this. Okay, so which framework do we prefer? And which one do you think has the most attention? Okay, React, by far, has the most attention. If I was going to try to get a job today, I'd learn React. Hands down, no questions asked. Go learn React. It should definitely, if you're in the field, you should have that as part of your toolkit. GraphQL, same thing. It's so popular right now. If you're really just trying to get a job, learn these two things. And this is why I built this course. Just to like it, I learned by creating projects, doing practical things. So if I had two technologies to learn after HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, React, GraphQL, like in that order, just get comfortable with them. Now, what do I prefer? I think feeling like I still like Vue. It just makes a little more sense, but I really enjoyed using React hooks. A little confusing. There was a big war because hooks-like functionality was tried to be, I don't even know if this is good English, but it tried to come into Vue.js, and it didn't turn out very well. There was like a huge revolt. People didn't like it. So it retains its original structure as a default, but then it does have like a hooks type of functionality as well if you want to incorporate it more into other things. I would also maybe TypeScript to be more marketable today. But if you ask me what I like Vue.js, and maybe plain JavaScript is kind of getting pretty solid. So especially if you use something like Vite, like VITE, it's from the developer that created Vue.js. It's a really good architecture for building apps that is way simpler than something like Webpack. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on Webpack. It's just, again, I tend not to like complicated things. So yeah, I would say still Vue. I need to go back to it now that I've done React hooks and see if I would like it as well as I did before, and then maybe try the new architecture. So any possibility to execute batch queries in GraphQL for the dependent tables, which has, I'm not exactly sure about this question, I have to say, I'm sorry. So maybe somebody else can answer this better than me. Batch queries, I mean, GraphQL is sort of like a batch. You just ask for everything at once. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by tables which have a one-to-one relationships. In GraphQL, it's essentially like a NoSQL language, so you don't really have tables. You have like objects, and you just sort of create a JSON-y-like query that retrieves the data. So I don't know if maybe you're thinking, more as how this would work in a traditional SQL sort of application, and it's maybe something completely different, but I could be wrong. I mean, apart from watching, no, just watch me and tell me what to cover, what you want me to do. I will push it to my boss, who's very nice and extremely brilliant, but needs to be convinced whenever something isn't grabbing enough traction. Do you use GraphQL? Oh, I forget to click on things. Do you use GraphQL in any of your personal work? Let's see. I'm using, right now I have a few projects that are open source that I do. I do something called Reveal.js. It's like a version of Reveal.js. It is essentially the slideshow that I showed you that has like the microsite built in. That's one of my projects. I created a template called 7 that does my website, and I have a customized version. So that's like 11T. And then that one I use Vue.js. Man, I have to cover so many things. And I'm still using like Vue 2.0 on Rabo.org. Would I switch? Probably at least to Vue 3. What I like about Vue is that it's so easy to learn, and you can just use the script tag. I think React is getting better. Like now you can use CodePen to do practice things with React without having to go through that whole build process. That's one of the problems with something like Svelte. It requires a build process. So anything that requires a build process is a little bit harder. So let's see, do I teach React Native? No. I think we do have some courses on that, but I don't get into it. Limited time. Let's see. Aren't we using the use context React hook for managing state here? Was I using use context? No, I don't think I am. I'm using, I could be wrong because I just got distracted over this. I'm using use effect and use callback to retrieve the data. I'm not really dealing with very complicated state. So I suggest to you. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Redux. Oh, look at me started on Redux. So you like Saeed, React, GraphQL, and Redux. I did Redux and it just seemed complicated. Like if I need some data, I tend to go for Firebase, my favorite database in the world. That thing is ridiculously cool. It essentially gives you offline features. It does multi-user features, all built in, handles the authentication. I am a big fan. I have the shirt somewhere. I should wear it next time. So, I love GraphQL, but I do like Firebase actually. Like you'll see that I have built some courses with like Firebase and I think React and Firebase and Vue. So check those out. Those are, I think once you've tried Firebase, everything else will seem like a huge pain. So it manages state a lot better, I think. So let's see. So considering a scenario, GraphQL to serve the APIs and having, oh my gosh, yeah, under the hood. I wouldn't like SQL and GraphQL. Okay, that might work, but it's a little bit hacky. I think you just need to go all in. Like either just go to Firebase or go all in on the GraphQL thing. And eventually it will be better. It'll be painful. I'm reminded of that movie where the doctor, it's Dr. Smith from Lost in Space. Pain. There's gonna be pain, my friend. But sometimes the pain is necessary for growth, and you do want to remain marketable. So take this course. It's 2 hours. You'll get some experience. And I highly suggest that you grab the code that I did, improve on it. I see some people already made some suggestions on things that I could improve, and then try doing your own thing. And let's see. Super. Enjoy. Oh, somebody's enjoying my Vue courses. More React would be awesome. Yes. So what am I doing next? So I'm trying to think. Okay, so right now I'm deep into Bootstrap 5. They just released beta 3. And I have to do this huge Bootstrap course. Then I have to do a course on updating Bootstrap. And then I think I might be back on Vue. I may try to do Vue with the hooky thing to see what it's like. You guys tell me what to do, and I will go for it. All right, so yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, Firebase. If I could love a technology, it would be Firebase. Cool. So I think I don't know how I'm doing on time. Well, it looks like it's almost time. So thank you so much. I really love doing these. So I appreciate there being so much encouragement, like in the chat. I have no idea what the traffic was. Looks like the reporting is a little bit weird, but thank you so much for coming. And yeah, look forward to the next launch, which is going to be on React, but focusing on Tailwind and React. And if there's another thing that I love is Tailwind CSS. I've done all the Bootstrap courses. Tailwind, fantastic for component-based projects like React and Vue. It's a little bit, the new version is a little bit challenging to install, but I walk you through all that in the next course. So keep your eyes peeled. Let's see, Firebase. So which course? I'm not sure which course are you talking about, but I'm giving you the links are right here on the screen. And you can just keep up with me on any of these platforms and get to all that stuff there. So I think that's it. So thank you so much. I'm so excited to do these. Super happy to see the interaction, and I will catch you again next month.
chicka 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 chicka